quick snapshot of how you started in life science and data science and how your journey has progressed to where you are now.
Yeah, so my starts from my PhD at Columbia University. I stumbled upon a multimodal healthcare project, which was discerning information from documents of different types, images, videos, text, and so on, and assembling and making it searchable and usable to doctors. And then IBM Healthcare Life Sciences Research happened to start Watson Health and lead the technology there, and then blockchain in healthcare, and then Novartis, and now helping companies or life sciences who want to adopt AI, or AI companies who want to talk to life sciences companies and be of value. And it's interesting that you're showing this picture here. I see a tectonic shift actually happening in not just in life sciences and healthcare, but across industries. And what do I mean by it? On one side of this shift, there is a tremendous amount of progress in AI. I don't need to tell you, every day you open New York Times or Wall Street Journal, there's something about the next generation AI, agents, whatnot. Companies, OpenAI, Microsoft, AWS, Google, all of the above have done tremendous amount of work in advancing that aspect of technology and AI, right? It's really transformational, but it's not enough. And the tectonic shift is on the other side, is what you are all doing. That what matters is actually how to change how work gets done in a life sciences or healthcare company using these technologies. As a matter of fact, I very much liked an interview with Mario Amadei, the CEO founder of Anthropic. And he said something very interesting. I don't want to minimize AI. He says, that is simple. We know how to do it. We're going to advance it more. The hard work is actually how to embed this thing into how work gets done in various industries. So what you're doing, don't take it lightly. Actually, that is much more difficult job to do than coming up with the next LLM, right? So as a matter of fact, if you look at it, and always you probably are at the receiving end of these questions at the firms that you're working at. Why am I not seeing value from this AI stuff that you've been talking to me about, right? There's a good reason for it. If you look at the flow of any technology, this is not about AI, it's everything. When electricity came, it was the same scenario. Whatever, digitization came, it was the same scenario. Invention happens. That invention, you are not doing it. These are the LLM makers and agent makers and all of these technology companies who are doing it. So that is the next generation LLM and all of that. Then when it gets to your hand, equipped with those platforms and technologies and software, that is where the invention happens or innovation happens. You come up with an app that is useful in certain thing, in clinical trials, in drug discovery, in commercialization, in RWE or whatnot, right? But that's not enough. Actually, I heard in one of the pharma companies, they said, we are an airline company. I said, how come you're an airline company? He says, because we have so many pilots running around. So there's so many pilots happening in pharma companies. And that is the reason is, yes, you have access to those LLMs, you have access to those software, you're innovative people, you come up with a cool application, but no one picks it up, right? Then it comes adoption. Adoption is few people are trying to do their work differently thanks to these kind of tools and the innovation that you have done. But again, that is not enough. No value will be received until then. If one or two people here and there are doing these stuff, you have to go all the way to diffuse these things into your enterprise, into how work gets done. And that is not about technology at all. That is about business transformation, change. It's about how work gets done, rethinking and rewiring the workflows in companies. And being honest with yourselves where actually AI can transform stuff and really making it a intentful, project to actually go do that. And it requires support from the very top. It's not a technology thing. I can assure you 80% of success and getting value from AI Doesn't have anything to do with technology. You have to be equipped with those platforms and technologies. You have to have the foundation and base. That's absolutely necessary. But you have to do many more things on top of it in order to get value from it.
All right, excellent. Going back to the tectonic tip. So I think this is an interesting sort of paradigm out there. I guess when you think about it, when you talk to other leaders out there, what's the biggest misconception you see about this moment in AI? You talked about, hey, we're seeing the news, it's always changing. All these companies come out with new models, new capabilities. So everyone's really excited about it, but at the same time, they're concerned, like, hey, how do we make it real? So I guess what are leaders underestimating most? Are they underestimating technology? Are they underestimating people? Are they underestimating the appetite for it?
The biggest misconception, and it's a point of frustration for me, is this is just a matter of technology. These are the techie people, let them deal with it and they get it done. And then 2 quarters after, did you change my business processes using this? No, I'm sorry, because this is as I said earlier, it's a more fundamental change in how you should do your work, right? So, and by the way, the commitment, incentives of how business line after business line, you need to start doing things differently. And having the business people, the P&L leaders who are responsible for different divisions in your company, committing to that change, right? It's not just like the early stages of electronic health records and decision support system for doctors. The doctor was doing his or her work, and then there was something on the side. From time to time, they would look at it and say, that is not integration, right? Nowadays, you have like ambient technology that listens to patient-provider interactions and captures everything, puts it in EHR. Everything becomes seamless. You need to get to that point. So no, I'm sorry, it's not just a technology thing. That is the biggest misconception I think people have. And they really need to commit to do the non-technology aspects of it to get it all the way to that diffusion point that we showed earlier.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes AI different than a lot of other technologies. It's not always an IT-led initiative. So I think we'll talk about a little bit, hey, how do we get the business, the P&L leaders to push more for it? I think an interesting sort of paradigm shift, I'm sure you heard, is Moderna sort of combining their HR and IT departments. How do we continue to encourage or nudge business folks to view it less as a novelty that, hey, I go to ChatGPT, et cetera, and more as a way to revolutionize or transform how I do actual business?
Yes. I think both things need to happen in parallel. One is, I see a lot of companies that give access to co-pilots and different types of tools to their employees. That's absolutely fine. You're helping with that adoption aspect. So gradually people, because they're innovative, they're inventive, they start doing things differently. But in order to get all the way to really changing how your company functions, you starts from leadership. The CEO, whomever that is in charge, has to be behind this thing. It has to be an intentful transformation of the business. After that, you need to really look at the business processes and workflows and which ones, maybe I should coin this term, is AI-able. AI is not usable for everything, right? And I'll give you examples of it later on if we get to it. Is which ones are AI-able, what value could be achieved from this, how work should be done differently, and how do I put the people and talent around this? Actually, it's very interesting. There are few executive search firms. Now they have stood up practices how to arrange people around an AI-ified workflow, which is very different than the current type of people who are around a certain workflow, right? It's different, and there are actually companies emerging on what tasks and jobs are AI impactable and how you should actually go about them. So it actually requires that intentful business transformation, aligning incentives. Everything is about incentive. This is business transformation doesn't happen with aligning incentives properly, right? It's not just I adopt the tool and I just throw it out there.
Yeah, I think the incentives are interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about ROI, of value, things like that. I think a lot of people there's two sides of the coin. There's, hey, we're going to adopt technology, AI, to improve efficiency, cut costs, things like that. But I hear a lot of other folks are like, hey, AI is an opportunity technology. It allows us to do more. So I guess when you think of ROI and value, how should organizations judge the technology, judge AI, and figure out, hey, how does it help us achieve our goals?
Yeah. So we are talking about knowledge work in this session, right? Everything you do is about knowledge work. So you have hypotheses, you collect information, you validate, you do experiments stuff, and then you iterate, right? That is the nature of it. For me, adoption of AI and ROI from AI is how I can do decisions and get to insights and take actions faster and with higher quality. If I'm taking 90 days to do something today, can I do it in 30 seconds thanks to AI and better quality decision? Nowadays, there's a lot of talk of agentic AI. Even you can go one step further. The agent can take actions for you, right? But the minimum is getting to insights, the fastest and the highest quality possible insights that enables me to make a decision. I give you an example. In my previous role, one of the tasks was every quarter, the leaders would get together to decide the fate of a molecule. Do we progress it or do we stop it? Right? This is very common across pharma companies. You can imagine how many people were running around putting PowerPoint decks and Excel sheets, and who could speak louder in those sessions to move a molecule forward or not. We actually put a system together. So collect all that information, do competitive intelligence, do what-if scenario analysis. There is no reason for anyone to run around, spend hundreds of hours of manpower and womanpower to do this, and then start a shouting match what should be advanced and what shouldn't be advanced. That all could be done by the system.
No, definitely. I like that. And I think moving to a more data-driven, model-informed process is amazing. How, if you're the CIO, head of data science, how do you actually nudge or push the business to that? Because again, we're all used to doing things certain ways. Inertia is problematic at times. How do I break that? How do I transform the organization?
I think there's a mindset shift that needs to happen. And this is very important. Nothing to do with technologies, this mindset. Oftentimes, as a IT person, as a data science person, as a biostatistician, you're a service center in these companies. Someone is doing something, hands you the file, give me the answer, I want to do something. For transforming the business with AI, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. This is a partnership as a first, basically as a partner with that business line. Common goals, attribution of value to data science and AI, right? And being committed to actually driving that value together, which goes back to the topic of incentive that we talked about and the leadership from the CEO down of how we're going to change the business and that transformation. So it's a partnership, it's a very close partnership, both being on the hook for delivery of that value and both being attributed with the value achieved. And how, because a lot of this, I mean, let's face it, comes down to how you get funded for the work that you're doing. It's very common. It's not just getting a 10% cut of every division out there and then giving it to data scientists and IT to do stuff. No, it's a partnership for value creation and being on the hook and receiving the attribution of the value that is also received.
Yeah, I think that decision of, hey, how do we structure, how do we partner and organize the organization is a key decision. What other key decisions have to be thought through as you're going to figure out, hey, how do we make AI successful in our org?
The way I look at success of AI in any company, not just life sciences, it's like the Maslow pyramid, right? So at the bottom, you have to have the foundation. The foundation is technology foundation. You have to have platforms to do your data science, AI work, manage your data and all of that stuff. LLMs, whatnot. You have to have the people foundation. You have to have the people who know how to do data science and AI, right? That goes without saying. And of course, partnership and stuff, because, hey, face it, you're not a technology company. Your purpose is different, but you have to have access to those talent and people. The second one is culture is so important. And as part of it is being evangelists being educators, being the experts, the eye-openers of the organization, the conscious of the organization when it comes to data science and AI, and educating everyone left, right, and top, bottom, right? I was interviewed in a podcast. One of the questions, and I was preparing myself, one of the questions was boards in life sciences companies. I looked at the top 20 life sciences companies. They didn't have anyone on their boards who understood AI. Now that company tells me that they want to transform themselves with AI. Who's on the board to do checks and balances on, are we doing the right stuff? Right? So it's a culture shift really needs to happen here in order to be successful. And of course, at the top of it is then that value creation, that portfolio of projects, that workflow transformation, stopping the work as it was done yesterday and starting the work as it should be done from now on.
Excellent. I like that. Yeah. I like your idea of Maslow's hierarchy, the thing like that. I am a recovering consultant, so I always think people, process, technology. That's how you make something work. We talked a little bit about people, the technology. You talked earlier about AI-able processes. So what types of processes are AI-able?
One of the things that I really liked, so because if you look at AI, AI is very good at dealing with lots and lots of data of different types. We humans, no matter how smart we are, we get tired, right? We get tired. We cannot look at data 24 hours a day. And by the way we are wired, we cannot discern details in data, right? And by the way, these days, there's a barrage of data. We cannot even keep up with the amount of data that is coming, especially if you're in a pharma company. But these things don't sleep. They don't eat. I mean, you just need to feed them energy and they keep working, right? One of the examples I really liked, I don't know what's the fate of it these days. I should ask my Novartis colleagues, but in the formulation process, it's actually an interesting process. I do something, then I pass it to the next person. They do whatever they do and so on. So they do experiments, shelfability, the temperatures, all of that stuff. And you look at that process, we analyze that process, we said every single person has to access a bunch of multimodal data sets in order to make a decision. So they access those data sets. Is it text? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it a PowerPoint? And then they have to do some analysis of that, take an action, and then pass the baton to the next person. And then when they do this, at the end, something doesn't work, they throw it in the garbage can, and they start from scratch. A lot of collective knowledge is lost there. So what we did at that time, we had the partnership with Microsoft. We instrumented that process with AI. Of course, this is prior to ChatGPT and this advent of LLMs, but some aspects of it because Microsoft was very much intertwined with OpenAI at the time. So at each step, the machine basically was analyzing all the multimodal document and bringing it to the attention of this person and knowing what analysis, what visualization for this context mattered. So basically fired up those things. So if I'm making a decision, everything is just ready, right? That is how to embed AI into the workflow. Or embedding AI into the workflow of medicinal chemists, because through generative AI, the machine could come up with a suggestion of a net new molecule, right? That then the medicinal chemist can actually take to the lab and experiment with it.
No, I like that. And I think the sheer volumes of data that are generated in life sciences is both a burden and an awesome opportunity. I know we chatted earlier before the talk today about how do we take advantage of that data? How do we make sure that there's enough data to support and feed these AI systems? Because each organization's generating tremendous amounts internally, but they're not generating everything. So how do we go about driving an explosion of data that actually supports some really transformational discoveries?
Yeah, so discovery in science is actually interesting. I never forget this moment. April 2017 in Tokyo, Japan. Nobel Prize Dialogue, Future of Intelligence. So there were like 6 Nobel laureates and a bunch of AI specialists gathering. The Princess of Japan presiding over the meeting. The discussion is various aspects of AI in different sciences and so on. The last panel, 5 Nobel laureates are sitting there, and the last question posed to them by the head of the Nobel institution was, can you imagine one day AI winning the Nobel Prize in Sciences? Of course, AI won the Nobel Prize. It wasn't AI. It was basically technology of AI that the person who created it who won the Nobel Prize. But I'm talking about AI coming with de novo science, so to speak, that warrants a Nobel Prize. And everyone laughed at the question at the time, and they mocked and said, maybe in literature, right? Which actually these days is true. But the reason is that epiphany, that aha moment, that making the connections, the anomalies that happen that actually can give someone an aha moment in scientific discovery. But it's actually interesting. If you look at LLMs, the emergent properties of LLMs, meaning that they never trained an LLM to do, for example, sentiment analysis, but by the way, it does sentiment analysis and much more, right? And this actually was a surprising thing to people who actually created these LLMs. That's why they were holding back from releasing it, because they really didn't have an explanation what this thing was doing. But that requires a lot of data of different types. So each pharma company, they're generating a lot of data. Yes, there are some of them are creating domain-specific language models for whatever data says that. But that is not enough. It's like the story that different people in the dark are touching the elephant, and everyone is giving a description of what this thing is without seeing the whole elephant. I wish there was a public-private partnership with all the data sets that you can actually get to the nirvana of multi-layer patient or human modeling, from phenotypic layer and observables all the way down to cellular level, and just throw that data in, and as many petabytes or how many data sets or number of parameters, hyperparameters, and train the LLM of LLM, so to speak, and then at that point, I think that kind of a aha moment, because of this, all these linkages that can happen at that point.
Yeah, I like it. Two questions that sort of spawned off of that statement you had. You talked about AI maybe eventually getting to a place where it does things on its own, but also requiring a lot of human intervention. Obviously, there's Google's co-scientists, things like that. So how do you balance giving AI agents agency of their own, keeping human in the loop, things like that? There's a lot of regulatory concerns. There's a lot of personnel concerns. People are like, hey, I don't want to lose my job, things like that. How do you partner with AI?
Yeah, so that's actually interesting question. I mean, let's put the philosophical aspect of it aside, because it gets very much into philosophy. But as I mentioned, there are companies nowadays. Actually, there's one by Eric Brian Olofsson, the famous economist, who is at Stanford now. They took all the tasks, the O.NET, National Bureau of Economics Research, basically the description of jobs and the subtasks, and they went one by one, which one is AI-able to what extent? Right? That is interesting. And they consult with HR departments of companies, what jobs and what tasks in your company is AI-able and how you should go about that. But because we are in a pharma life sciences space, regulatory, for very good reasons, is a major thing, right? As a matter of fact, I was the other day reviewing the AIification of clinical trial of a company, of a software company, what they were doing and trying to AIify, from protocol design to optimization to getting ready to roll it out, recruit patients and stuff. And I said, but you cannot ever AIify this completely, because there's always this human who has to check. You adapt the protocols, someone needs to check. You do whatever, someone needs to check. You cannot take that person out for those regulatory reasons, unless there is an agreement between the regulator and the software companies and you, the pharma company, that, hey, if we do these things based on agents, FDA or regulator, you approve it, you have visibility into it, and the agent, we put the guardrails for those agent actions. And for certain scenarios, a human needs to jump in and say yes or no, right? I think there are structural issues with respect to guardrails that requires the collaboration between pharma companies, the regulator, the software companies to have this end-to-end and put the proper guardrails and minimize that intervention from the human expert and let these agents, because again, as I said earlier, the value is time to decisions fastest and with the highest quality.
No, I like that. I have one last question. We are at time. We've talked a lot about what today looks like. I guess if you look forward 3, 5, 10 years, how do we know, or what would be that turning point? You're like, hey, AI really made a change in how we bring drugs to market.
My response, you might not like it. We are not even talking about AI at that point. It's behind the scene, is in the background. You don't even notice that you're using AI. That is success in AI. If you are having a forceful effort in your company and everyone is talking about AI, and you haven't succeeded. It's embedded into the workflows. It's rewired the way work gets done. It's there for you to do your job, and everything gets done faster. And imagine if you get to that point, how much cheaper the drugs would be, how many more people you can help because things are done much more faster and with higher quality.
No, I like it. I think fortunately you're having an audience here that's probably not offended by the statement. We obviously like data science. We like AI. We think there's the potential to really transform some things. So I think we're all excited about that future. But I'd like to thank Shahram for his insights. He'll be around for the next few hours if anyone wants to grab him.